Carl Jung discovered that empaths who survive narcissistic abuse go through 4 distinct psychological stages, and the final stage terrifies narcissists more than anything else. Stage 1 begins with your natural empathy, attracting predators like moths to a flame. By stage 4, you've become completely immune to their manipulation. But it's stage 2 that breaks most empaths, and if you can survive it, you become unbreakable. Picture this moment. You're sitting alone after another devastating encounter with someone who promised to love you, but systematically destroyed your sense of self instead. You've given everything, your energy, your boundaries, your very soul, only to be discarded like yesterday's newspaper. You wonder, how did this happen to me again? Jung understood this pattern better than anyone. He wrote, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. But for empaths, this understanding comes at a terrible price. What Jung called the collision with the shadow happens not just within themselves, but through the predatory behavior of those who exploit their light. But here's what Jung discovered that changes everything. The empath's gift isn't just sensitivity, it's what I call unconscious truth detection. Jung observed that highly sensitive people can perceive what others hide, even when they don't realize they're doing it. You see through facades without trying. You feel the pain behind someone's anger. You sense the emptiness behind their charm. Jung wrote, "Your vision becomes clear when you look into your heart. Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakens." But this gift comes with a dark side. Narcissists are drawn to empaths for the same reason moths are drawn to flames. Your light reveals their darkness, and they need that light to feel alive. But unlike the moth that dies in the flame, the narcissist tries to extinguish the light instead. What I call Jung's vampire dynamic, where one person feeds on another's life force. Jung understood this as psychological parasitism, though he used different terms, and empaths, with their natural giving nature, become the perfect prey. Jung identified specific patterns in how predators exploit highly sensitive people, what I call the 4 stages of empathic destruction, but understanding these stages is the key to breaking free from the cycle forever. Stage 1. The light trap. Jung understood that empaths are born with what he called an overflow of libido, not sexual energy, but life energy. This creates what I call the empathic magnetism. You naturally radiate warmth, understanding, and acceptance. People feel safe around you before they even know why. In childhood, this shows up as the kid who comforts others when they cry, who can't stand to see anyone left out, who feels physical pain when witnessing cruelty. Jung observed that these children often become what he termed the family healer, taking on everyone's emotional burdens. But here's the trap. Your light doesn't just attract good people seeking healing, it attracts predators seeking supply. Jung wrote, "Where love rules, there is no will to power, and where power predominates, love is lacking." Narcissists operate from pure will to power, and your love becomes their feeding ground. The narcissist studies you during this stage. They watch how you respond to sob stories, how you react to their vulnerability, how much you'll give before you start to question. They're not falling in love with you. They're cataloging your weaknesses. What I call the reconnaissance phase of psychological manipulation, building on Jung's understanding of how predators study their targets. The predator maps your empathic responses like a general mapping enemy territory. They learn exactly which buttons to press to keep you giving, caring, and sacrificing. Comment if you've ever felt like a magnet for broken people. I attract what needs healing. But you don't recognize this as predation because it feels like being needed, being special, being the one person who truly understands them. Jung warned about this trap. The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. But in stage 1, you're becoming who they need you to be. Stage 2, the soul extraction. If stage 1 is the trap, then stage 2 is what I call the great devouring. Jung observed that narcissists don't just want your love, they want to consume your entire psychic energy. This is where the real psychological warfare begins. Jung wrote, "The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. But with narcissists, only you transform, and not in a healthy way. You become smaller while they become more inflated." Jung called this projection, but what I call projection bombardment, an overwhelming assault where the narcissist projects all their shame, rage, and inadequacy onto you. Suddenly, you're the one who's too sensitive, too needy, too much. They rewrite history to make you the problem in every conflict. But the most insidious part is what I call empathic inversion. Your natural gift of feeling others' emotions becomes a weapon against you. When they rage, you feel responsible for their anger. When they withdraw, you feel guilty for their distance. When they cheat, you wonder what you did to drive them away. Jung understood this as the shadow projection process. The narcissist cannot face their own darkness, so they project it onto you. And because you're empathic, you absorb it as if it were your own. You start believing their version of reality, where you're the broken one who needs fixing. The psychological torture of this stage is that you're being punished for the very qualities that make you good. Your compassion is labeled as weakness. Your boundaries are called selfish. Your needs are dismissed as drama. What I call the crucifixion of the authentic self, though Jung would have described this as ego dissolution under psychological pressure. You find yourself walking on eggshells, constantly monitoring their moods, shape-shifting to avoid their wrath. What I call hypervigilant empathy. Your nervous system stays activated 24/7, trying to predict and prevent their next emotional explosion. Jung observed that prolonged exposure to this kind of psychological abuse creates what he described as dissociation, but what I call soul fragmentation. Parts of your authentic self go into hiding to survive. You lose touch with your own needs, your own desires, your own truth. Stage 3, the dark night of the soul. Jung wrote, "No tree, it is said, can grow to heaven unless its roots reach down to hell." Stage 3 is your journey to hell, the complete collapse of everything you thought you knew about love, about yourself, about reality itself. This is what I call the empathic breakdown. Your giving nature, which once felt unlimited, hits empty. Your capacity for understanding, which seemed infinite, reaches its limit. Your ability to make excuses for their behavior finally crumbles under the weight of truth. Jung called this the dark night of the soul, a necessary psychological death that precedes rebirth. But in the moment, it feels like you're dying. Jung observed psychological compensation in patients under extreme stress, but what I call acute psychological decompensation, anxiety, depression, physical illness, a complete inability to function. The narcissist often intensifies their abuse during this stage because they sense your awakening. They launch what I call the final harvesting campaign, love bombing mixed with increased cruelty, designed to extract every last drop of your empathic energy before you escape. Comment if you've been through rock bottom and found strength there. My breakdown became my breakthrough. But here's what Jung understood that most people miss. This breakdown isn't pathology, it's psychology. It's your psyche's way of forcing you to confront the truth you've been avoiding. Jung wrote, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." In stage 3, you're forced to accept that you've been participating in your own destruction. You start questioning everything. The relationship, yes, but more importantly, yourself. How did I let this happen? Why did I stay so long? What is wrong with me? Jung called these the fundamental questions that arise during individuation, but what I call the questions of individuation become especially acute during this stage, the painful but necessary inquiry that leads to psychological wholeness. This stage often involves what Jung termed the confrontation with the shadow, not their shadow, but your own. You must face the parts of yourself that enabled the abuse, your people-pleasing, your conflict avoidance, your addiction to being needed. Jung understood that healing requires owning your contribution without taking responsibility for their behavior. The breakthrough comes when you realize that your empathy isn't the problem. It's your lack of boundaries around it. Jung wrote, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. The narcissist irritated you because they mirrored your own abandoned self, the part of you that you sacrificed to keep them happy." Stage 4. The Phoenix Rebirth. Jung believed that individuation, becoming who you truly are, requires integrating all aspects of the psyche, including the shadow. Stage 4 is where the empath achieves what I call shadow-integrated empathy. Compassion combined with discernment, love combined with boundaries. You emerge from stage 3 fundamentally changed, not broken, but refined, not bitter, but wiser. You've developed what Jung called differentiated consciousness, the ability to feel others' emotions without absorbing them as your own. The most terrifying thing for narcissists is an empath who has completed their individuation process. You can still see their pain, still sense their emptiness, still recognize their wounded inner child, but you're no longer compelled to fix it. Jung wrote, "I am not what happened to me, I am what I choose to become." In stage 4, you choose yourself, not selfishly, but consciously. You understand that your empathy is a gift to be protected, not a resource to be exploited. You develop what I call boundaried compassion, the ability to love others without losing yourself. This transformation creates what Jung termed the autonomous personality, someone who operates from their own center rather than reactive patterns. Narcissists can no longer hook you with drama, guilt, or manipulation because you've learned to distinguish between their emotions and your own. You become what I call empathically sovereign. You give from choice, not compulsion. You help from strength, not weakness. You love from fullness, not emptiness. And this terrifies narcissists because they can no longer feed on your energy. If you've become immune to manipulation tactics, comment, "I see the game, but I don't play anymore." The narcissist will try everything to pull you back into the old dynamic. Love bombing, threats, smear campaigns, using wild accusations. But none of it works because you've achieved what Jung called psychological independence. Your sense of self no longer depends on their validation or approval. Jung understood that healing isn't just about escaping abuse. It's about integrating the lessons into a more complete version of yourself. What I call post-narcissistic growth involves several key psychological developments. First, you develop what Jung called the transcendent function, the ability to hold opposites in creative tension. You can be both compassionate and boundaried, both open and protected, both trusting and discerning. This isn't contradiction, it's psychological maturity. Second, you learn to recognize what Jung termed the narcissistic constellation in others. You can spot the signs early, the excessive charm, the pity stories, the boundary testing, the intermittent reinforcement. Your empathy becomes a radar system for authenticity rather than a beacon for predators. Third, you develop what I call conscious empathy. Instead of automatically absorbing everyone's emotions, you choose when to attune to others and when to maintain your own energetic boundaries. Jung called this the art of conscious relationship. The relationship patterns that emerge in stage 4 are completely different. You attract people who appreciate your depth without exploiting it, who can meet your emotional intensity without being overwhelmed by it, who respect your boundaries because they have healthy ones too. Jung believed that individual transformation creates collective change. When empaths complete this four-stage journey, they model a different way of being for others. What I call the healed empath effect ripples out in powerful ways. You become living proof that sensitive people don't have to be victims. You show others that empathy can coexist with strength, that compassion doesn't require self-sacrifice, that healing is possible even after the worst psychological abuse. Other empaths look at your transformation and think, if they can do it, maybe I can too. You become what Jung called a wounded healer, someone who transforms their pain into wisdom and uses that wisdom to help others heal. But perhaps most importantly, your transformation changes the narcissistic supply chain. Every empath who completes this journey is one less source of energy for predators. Every boundary you set makes it slightly harder for narcissists to find easy targets. Jung wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." When empaths claim this privilege, they don't just save themselves, they contribute to the healing of the collective shadow. Jung understood that narcissistic abuse isn't random. It serves a psychological function for both parties. The narcissist gets to avoid their own shadow by projecting it onto the empath. The empath gets to avoid their own power by staying in victim consciousness. But here's the profound truth Jung discovered. The abuse relationship is a distorted mirror of individuation. Both people are trying to become whole, but they're doing it through each other instead of through their own inner work. The narcissist seeks wholeness by consuming others' life force. The empath seeks wholeness by healing others' wounds. Both approaches fail because wholeness can only come from within. When the empath completes the four-stage journey, they break this unconscious contract. They stop trying to heal others and focus on healing themselves. They stop giving their power away and start reclaiming their sovereignty. This is what Jung meant by individuation, becoming undivided within yourself, not perfect, but complete, not without wounds, but not defined by them, not without empathy, but not enslaved by it. Jung believed that empaths serve an evolutionary function in human consciousness. You're not just sensitive people, you're what I call consciousness accelerators. Your ability to feel deeply, perceive authentically, and love unconditionally pushes the species toward greater emotional intelligence and spiritual awareness. But this gift comes with great responsibility. You must learn to use your empathy consciously, not just reactively. You must develop the discernment to know when your sensitivity is serving evolution and when it's enabling dysfunction. The four-stage journey isn't just personal healing, it's preparation for your larger purpose. Jung wrote, "Your vision becomes clear when you look into your heart. Who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakens." Awakened empaths become agents of collective transformation. You're here to model what healthy empathy looks like, to show that sensitivity is strength, not weakness, to demonstrate that love can have boundaries, that compassion can have limits, that giving can be conscious rather than compulsive. So here's what I want you to understand. If you're an empath who has experienced narcissistic abuse, you're not broken. You're not too sensitive. You're not fundamentally flawed. You're a highly evolved consciousness having a very human experience of learning to protect your gifts. The four stages aren't punishment, they're preparation. Each stage teaches you something essential about yourself, about others, about the nature of healthy relationship. Stage 1 teaches you about your magnetism. Stage 2 teaches you about your boundaries. Stage 3 teaches you about your strength. Stage 4 teaches you about your sovereignty. Jung spent his entire career studying the process of becoming whole, and he found that it always requires facing the shadow, both your own and others. The narcissist was your teacher in this process, though neither of you understood it at the time. If you recognize yourself in these stages, know that you're exactly where you need to be. Trust the process. Trust your intuition. Trust that your empathy, properly developed, will become your greatest strength. Carl Jung discovered that empaths who survive narcissistic abuse go through 4 distinct stages. Stage 1, the light trap, where your gifts attract predators. Stage 2, the soul extraction, where they attempt to consume your essence. Stage 3, the dark night, where everything falls apart so it can be rebuilt correctly. Stage 4, the phoenix rebirth, where you become unbreakable. The narcissist taught you the most important lesson of your life, that your empathy is sacred and must be protected. They forced you to develop the very boundaries and discernment that now make you immune to manipulation. Jung's gift to every empath is this understanding. Individuation, becoming who you truly are, is not just possible after abuse, it's the whole point. You didn't go through this journey to remain a victim. You went through it to become a conscious creator of your own reality. If you want to dive deeper into how empaths can reclaim their power and transform their relationships, check out my video on When the Empath Stops, Forgiving, Every Mask Falls, where I explore the revolutionary process of conscious forgiveness and authentic boundaries. Your journey through these 4 stages isn't just personal healing. It's preparation for your role as a healed empath in a world that desperately needs your gifts, protected, conscious, and fully empowered. Thanks for walking this path of understanding with me. See you in the next dimension of healing.